I hadn't planned to do a video today because I'm knackered tired. Earlier today, from about 2 o'clock to 4:45, I had a remote hearing of the High Court planning case that I've been involved in. I decided in that particular matter that was before the court that I wouldn't make any submissions. But given that I have title on the case, I would always make sure that I'm listening to any court case that has my name on the court papers. It was a long one. I was sitting at home. It was a remote hearing. It's interesting that this could be in the long term considered to undermine Ireland's principle of open justice, and that's enshrined in the Constitution. All justice must be done in the open. If we're going to have remote hearings, which it must be said are very handy, then it should be possible for any member of the public to click on the link and to watch it. They have an aversion in the Irish courts to video recording and all of that kind of thing, but they're going to have to bite the bullet at that, because if they want to carry on with these remote hearings, then the right of people to come in and watch it, whether it's online or actually in the courts, is a constitutional one. Now, with Gemma O'Doherty, she argued that her hearings are heard in camera. They weren't, because she was entitled to get an unredacted transcript of it, and she was also entitled to publish it. But that kind of slips below the normie radar. People want to see it happen. So that's a long-term thing. Anyway, it's why I'm knackered tired. But it was a great video linked below from Thomas Sheridan. I'll actually link both of them, both his Sunday video and his Monday video, because we've now just crossed midnight into Tuesday. And they're really, really good. He's talking about the possibility of stopping doing these videos. I don't want him to stop doing videos. I want him to keep doing them. But, the goalposts are changing and things are moving. Now, I'm still talking kind of on an aside of what I was going to get at. Thomas mentions the fact that Donald Trump has created the office of the former president. Trump has been very shrewd. Anybody who thinks Trump is stupid is just getting too much RTE. Too much of the coneheads in RTE. They're all coneheads. Every single one of them is a conehead. That is something that's worth observing. Anyway, I've digressed. Thomas was talking about Trump, and Trump has established the office, and Trump is very, very sensitive to language. He's extremely sensitive to language in the way that these socially literate, clued-in people are. Trump has established the office of Donald J. Trump, former president. He has not established it as the office of the former president. That would be a different thing. Trump has called it the office of Donald J. Trump, former president. That's a very serious difference. It's a private office of the man called Donald Trump, who happened to be the former president. That's why nobody's laughed at him, because he set a trap for them with that. If he were to say the office of the former president, they'd go for him. It's not the office of the former president. It's the office of Donald J. Trump, former president. How we, syntax and phrasing, of course. I say this having taught English to the equivalent of British A-level, Irish Leaving Cert Honours for 11 years. You become extremely, extremely sensitive to language, and how the subtle moving around of words can change the entire meaning of something. For many people, that's a subtlety that Trump has done, but I got it immediately. The office of Donald J. Trump, former US president. Brilliant. I'll get back to point. Now we're apparently supposed to wear 2 masks. That monster Kamala Harris, the HR lady, Stixie called her the HR lady. That's really good. That monster Kamala Harris, she is like a HR lady. These smarmy HR ladies. They are a type. I remember there was a character in Peep Show, Channel 4's hilarious comedy, called Barbara, and she was the typical psycho HR lady. But anyway, Kamala Harris today, there's a photo of her wearing 2 masks. This is the doubling down that they're doing because they're getting desperate. The mask thing is a black magic. It was always black magic, the mask thing. Actually, the whole coronavirus thing is black magic. But the mask was a visible burlesquing of those who were too stupid to see it for what it is. Thomas also talks about needing to see through things. And of course, if you, as I've said countless times, you read through the mask law, at least here in Ireland, and it's not enforceable. Even on its own terms, it's not enforceable. It's valid law. Don't buy the free man stuff, but it's not enforceable. Today, Monday, there was a tweet by an Orla Tinsley. Orla Tinsley has cystic fibrosis. She has coped very well with it. She has written about it repeatedly in the Irish Times, which in retrospect actually should be a red flag. It is in this instance, and I'll explain why. And she had a tweet today explaining how a delivery to her home by a van driver from Tesco, she complained to Tesco about it and refused to take the item because he was not wearing a mask when he got out of the van in the open air outside her house. I tweeted in reply to it that while I had followed her in the Irish Times, I found it questionable that she felt the need to put this on social media rather than just going and complaining to Tesco if she felt she had a legitimate grievance. This, as Thomas says, this is a blessing. We are seeing them in their real light. All right, cystic fibrosis is a very serious chronic condition, and I sympathise with anybody who has cystic fibrosis. I do sympathise. But there are a lot of abusive and aggressive and angry tweets in response to what she said. You know, they're calling her virtue signalling, which actually is true. They're calling her a grass and a snitch and a Karen. Now, normally I would come out with that kind of thing in respect of the fact that the woman has a chronic illness and that she's written about it repeatedly in the Irish Times and how she's coped with it. You know, I respect that. I respect it objectively. But she doesn't seem to be a very nice person. I'm afraid she doesn't seem to be a very nice person. This is the test. This is an acid test that we're going through here. Thomas says it and he's right. Watch all of these. Watch them all. You know, I'm sorry for her that she has this chronic condition. I sympathise and she's doing her best and I accept that. But I don't know really why she felt the need to broadcast on Twitter that she'd gone and grassed to Tesco about a van driver who'd stepped out of the van in the open air without a mask on. It does say something. I'm afraid it is reflective of character. I'm sorry, but it is. I had to lodge a cheque. You know, do you remember cheques? They're kind of like groats. You know, they're kind of back in the dark, and fax machines. Unless you live in Leitrim. VHS from VHS video players. I had to lodge a cheque today, and I had to go down to a bank. Not far from me. I was stopped by the Gardaí. I said, I'm going to the bank. Oh, that's fine. They said, well, I said, no, that's fine. They said, a bank is an essential visit. That's fine. Thank you. Oh, grand. I said, still not getting trouble from the police. No. But anyway, I drove down to the bank. It would have been within my 5 kilometres anyway. And I wanted to lodge a cheque. How often do we lodge cheques now? I wanted to lodge a cheque. And the machines that accept cheque and cash lodgements are only indoors. Certain banks, like the Bank of Ireland, have outdoor... All the Bank of Ireland ATMs accept lodgements. It's a good bank, the Bank of Ireland, actually. Of all our banks in Ireland, as crooked as they all may be, okay, they're all crooks and run by lulas and psychopaths, but at the same time, I personally bank in the Bank of Ireland because, you know, their ATMs take checks and this kind of thing. You can lodge at an ATM 24/7. Any of their ATMs take lodgements, so it's good. You know, I've also found actually that staff in the Bank of Ireland are better than many of the others. Certainly this other bank that I went down to today. Oh, man. But I had to lodge a cheque. And I had to go into the premises. And a woman who looked in her 60s turns to me, "Where is your mask?" One of the customers. I said, "Excuse me, I want the manager. I'm being harassed here." So down comes a member of staff. He says, "What's the problem?" I said, "That woman felt she had the right to demand my medical history." "She only asked you why you weren't wearing a mask." I said, "Is she a member of staff?" "Oh no," he said, "she was entitled to ask that." "No, she's not entitled to ask that." He said, "Why are you not wearing a mask?" He said, "Do you have a medical exemption?" "Yes." He said, "That's okay." "No," I said, "It's not okay that she feels she's entitled to interrogate another customer in a bank." I said, "That is not okay." And then an owl fella says, "You're spreading the disease that makes us all sick." "That's fine." I said, "That's cool." So I stood in the door then of the bank and closed the security door, and I said, "Now we'll all wait for the guards to come down." Okay? And then out comes Karen, the HR manager. She said, I'll get the guards on you. No, I said, I'll get the guards first. I said, because when I come into the branch and I have an exemption and I'm not breaking the law, I expect your customers not to abuse me. She said, I didn't hear them abusing you. And then the outfit says, I was telling him he has to wear a mask. And the two of them said to him, shut up. The two employees said to your man, shut up. I said to them, do you think telling a customer to shut up is very good customer service? They said, you're not the customer we're telling to shut up. Very good, I said. Now, I said, we'll wait for the guards to come down. I said, and we can talk to this gentleman and to that woman about a breach of Section 6 of the Public Order Act, abusive, threatening and insulting behaviour in a public place. I said, because it is not their place to accost or to upbraid another customer who comes into this bank. You're entitled to ask me. I said, you did. I explained. You accepted it. And Karen, the HR manager, said, would you just like to do your transaction? I said, I don't know. Can I do my transaction without being abused by your other customers? I said, I know this. We're not in Howth at the moment. I said, so, I know sometimes I have to venture out of my golden bubble. But having said that, I said, I'd like to do my transaction if you don't mind. I said, without being harassed by abusive customers. She said, you're still blocking the door. She said, there are other people who want to get in and out. Okay, so I opened the door. And your man, the granddad, shuffled out and he didn't say another word. So I went over to the lodgement machine and they came over. They said, can we help you with this? Yeah, and I did the lodgement. At this stage now, the owl one was walking out and I turned around to her. I said, great country expression, pet. A closed mouth catches no flies. And she just shuffled out as well. That's how you deal with these ones. Don't use bad language. Don't shout. Don't threaten. But you treat them as the absurd clowns that they are. And you treat the staff that way as well. However, I've written into the manager there to say that's not to happen again. And if it does happen again, I won't be quite as patient and as understanding. And I will get the guards down next time that happens. So much of it is the inner Mrs. Carmody. I'm not breaking the law by not wearing a mask. I'm not a criminal. And I'm not going to have, particularly in a bank, in a financial institution where you're dealing with money, I expect to be made feel comfortable when I go in there. I expect not to be made feel uncomfortable. And if they cannot control their customers that way, then that's their problem and it's not mine. And no customer has the right to accost me and to demand my medical history. None of them. The staff don't have the right, although in fairness to them, they didn't. They've obviously been briefed on it. I wrote a letter to the manager. I could read it out. It's not very long. It's only 2 pages. I did write this, the final paragraph. Government guidelines regarding COVID-19 expressly state that it is not appropriate for customers to in any way approach others who they see without face coverings. So it would be wise for this bank and all of its customers to respect such guidelines. In order to avoid any future trouble as described herein, it might be helpful for the bank to prominently display the specific government guidelines as referred to above, which instruct people to refrain from harassing those not in face coverings. Such would also indemnify your bank from being sued by another customer who might not be as patient and understanding as I was, including whereby that customer might call the Gardaí arising from misconduct similar to as arose today. Please see enclosed a copy of a recent letter of mine to the Gardaí. And that's the letter that's pinned on my Twitter. You have to stand your ground. And I've actually just seen a video on Twitter. I downloaded a copy of it because it concerns me so much. The police somewhere in England, I think it would be somewhere in northwestern England, the accents roughly sound Merseyside into Lancashire, are in somebody's home and they are... it's not entirely clear from this video what the accusation is. There's the Scottish video from about 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is very concerning. But in this particular video, it seems, if I'm right, that the police suspect that this woman has more people in her house than she should have. And I suspect that there was an accusation made against the woman or those with her of being noisy in the garden, which of course would be completely spurious. So the police come. And she starts all the freemen on the land lecturing to them. And then she prominently coughs, at which point they arrest her. And they pin her to the ground and the kids are crying and everybody's shouting and the video ends. That was stupid of her. That was stupid. That was not her cleverest moment. And I won't comment about the character of the woman, I don't know her, but I'll just say that that was not an intelligent thing for her to do. Somebody put up a post, this conversation happening on Twitter about it right now. And I did say that, I said, what we're seeing is that people are being groomed into accepting the police calling to their houses without warning. That's what happens in North Korea, East Germany, Ceausescu's Romania. It doesn't happen in a free society. It shouldn't happen in a republic with rule of law. So there's an agenda here to make people used to the notion of a knock on the door from the police. A knock on the door from the police is North Korea, as I said. It's not what happens in the Republic of Ireland, although actually there haven't been any videos of that kind of carry on in the Republic of Ireland. It's the two videos that have attracted attention were Scotland and it seems England. And there aren't the same constitutional protections in the UK that we have here. I haven't seen any video so far of the Gardaí behaving inappropriately to people, particularly anti-maskers. I have seen one video that I put up on my YouTube of the Gardaí dragging two young men or youths off a train at Salt Hill in Dublin. And again, you don't know the full story there. That would give cause. It's worth finding out what actually happened there. But this persistent bullying, authoritarian harassment that you see. There's another video of a man in England being stopped by a police officer on his way to work and being asked his name. Then it turns out he wasn't obliged to give it, but he got arrested and lost a day's work. I haven't seen any such videos like that here. Maybe they've been hidden. Maybe I have an optimistic view or an unrealistically rosy-tinted view of the Gardaí. But certainly, I mean, when I was driving down, as I said, when I was driving down to the bank, I was stopped by them. I said, I'm going to the bank. That's fine. They said, but blah, blah. No, move on. They said, it's okay. You can go. It's an essential job. Maybe it's something in my manner. Maybe it's the fact that I don't swear or shout at them or that kind of thing. Anybody. I didn't shout or swear in the bank. It comes possibly from being a teacher for 11 years, where I'd made up my mind I would never resort to aggressive behaviour against the kids. If people are being aggressive to you, being aggressive back doesn't help. On principle, and that's easy for me to say, but on principle, particularly with children and teenagers, they're being aggressive to you, so you start shouting at them. What does that achieve? That's why I decided not to shout, but that frame of mind I had to get into for teaching, and it kept me going. It built a good career for me. It did, that frame of mind. Because, it was why I was able to keep classes under control, because they knew they weren't going to get the cabaret out of me. As I said in a previous video, when you can get a teacher wound up, sure, it's well worth all the punishment. It's worth it. They don't realise this. It's great crack to get a teacher in secondary school. Not so much so in primary school, but in secondary school. It's mega to get a teacher wound up. It's part of the crack of secondary school. Particularly these older teachers. I describe every school has a stripper. That was the type of teacher I describe. Every school does have a clown teacher who nobody takes seriously. And it doesn't matter what they teach. It's not really, although in Ireland, I don't know, my English and US listeners might have a different take on this. Anybody who knows Irish secondary schools know that religion is the clown class. I'm enumerate, I can hardly count. So in secondary schools they try to get you to teach every subject under the sun. But the one subject I would never take on was maths. But the second subject I took it on once, I think, was religion. And I mean, me teaching religion, stop. All I did with them, I did comparative religion with them. And we talked about, it was a chat. I didn't follow the books, or let's carry on. What age are they? 14, 15? You're going to talk religion to 14 and 15-year-olds? Yeah, good luck to you. Work away with that one. I just have a chat with them. I was a very easy teacher. So long as they respected my authority and weren't rude or abusive to me, I was very, very easy with them. What's the point in trying to force them to do things they don't want to do? With my older classes, with my 5th and 6th years, I didn't enforce homework. I'd give them homework and I'd say, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm not doing the exam. You're doing the exam. You might want to study something more important at this time. I don't know. Suit yourselves out. But I had a rule. Don't come to me with late homework. If you haven't got it in at the deadline, just don't bother getting it in. I won't correct it later than the deadline. But if you don't have it in, you will not be punished for not getting it in 5th and 6th year. You now have to start prioritising for yourself and working in an academic environment. Those of you who might go on to further education after secondary school, working in an academic environment where you're not going to be, where the atmosphere of the teachers is not a punitive one, but where if you don't do the work, you simply fail. So this is what I said to them. You're going to go to university and you don't keep up with the workload in university, you will fail. And nobody cares. I've digressed, haven't I? But yeah, this is now what we're dealing with the two mask clownery. And yeah, there were these clown teachers in secondary schools. You could spot them. Once I started teaching long term, I could spot these. Every time I go into a school, I could spot the loo-la teacher in a school. If it was an all-girls school, it would be the older teacher who was there 40 years and she was heading for retirement. And all the girls would pat her on the back and they'd rub her hair. She'd come into the room and then they'd all sit and chat on their phones and do their makeup. The girls would all just sit there chatting, reading magazines. Cosmopolitan. Don't think they read Just 17 or that in a secondary school. They read Cosmopolitan and Heat. They all read, those magazines like Just 17 are read by kids who are 10. The girls who are 16 or 17 are reading Heat. Take a Break. They'd all sit there reading Take a Break and Heat and, on their phones and doing the makeup. And I remember actually my first day in the school, I had a class of girls who were about that age, and I went in there and they all had their feet up. So I pulled the desk from under a girl. I said, teacher comes into the room, you don't have your feet up on the desk, do you? I said, in fact, ladies, stand up. And they all stood up. And one young one says, I'm not used to a man speaking to me that way. I completely believe you, I said. I completely believe you, I said, but when you're in my class, you'll get used to it very quickly. Within 10 minutes, all those girls were sitting like little schoolgirls, little Miss Prims, doing their English work. Because girls in a secondary school do not like a male teacher who's a pussy. And I remember meeting a few of the girls from that school in that class and some of the younger classes. It was a rough working class school, all girls. And they said, you were rapid, which is a Dublin working class thing for, you were rapid. You were a Dublin working class thing for you were a really good teacher. They said you took no shit off us and we learnt an awful lot in your class. And this was, I met them in another kind of social environment just by accident. And I was chatting with them. If I ever met my past pupils on the train or something, I'd always chat to them like I was just a peer. Because we weren't in school. I wasn't teaching them anymore. So I'd tell them to call me Chris and all this kind of, call me Christian. And we'd all stand around and chat. And I said to them, girls, a crowd of teenage girls wants men who are assertive and strong. That doesn't mean I'm going around bullying you or roaring and shouting at you, but it does mean that I won't take any crap out of you. And I said, so many of the men, particularly younger male teachers, just allow the teenage girls to just ride roughshod over them and be insolent with them and have this meh attitude to them. I said, it won't happen with me. I said, and that's even, maybe it's because I'm gay. Ah, yeah, they said, we all knew you were queer from the moment we set eyes on you. Yeah, well, I said, it's gas though, I said, how we all got on so well then. Took 10 minutes with those girls. Took 10 minutes. Whereas the clown teacher in a boys' school... oh dear. People get carried out in stretchers when it's a boys' school. They get carried out in stretchers, but it is hysterically funny. And I took that into teaching with me. It's why I couldn't take the job seriously. Really, okay, yes, the academics of it I took seriously, but I couldn't take the rest of it seriously. It's all falling apart in us, isn't it? And Thomas has talked about the growing fracture and how Stixie talks about people, how Biden promised the moon on a stick. When you pander to those kind of people who were anti-Trump, those orange man bad people, your best is never good enough for them. You never should pander to those ones. It's the same with the mask thing, and the same with all those people. Don't pander to them. My mother said to me today, she said, do you think you should have just told them that you had an exemption? I said, tell two strangers I have an exemption. Should I describe my medical history to two strangers in a bank? Is that what you're suggesting I do? Oh, well, no, really, they hadn't the right to ask you that. No, I said, they hadn't the right to ask me that. So I said, no. You can't pander to these ones. You have to take a hard line with that. It's the same with teaching. I didn't pander to any of the kids or to my colleagues. In many schools I was hated. I was a hated teacher. But again, it's the Trump thing, I suppose. I'm being narcissistic or egotistical by comparing myself. But somebody put up an article today about Nietzsche talking about how the weak men are jealous of the strong men. Yes, they are. We saw that in Revenge of the Nerds. We saw that with Trump. The nerds were actually jealous of the jocks because the jocks were strong men. Not as portrayed in Revenge of the Nerds, but Revenge of the Nerds is gaslighting. What I remember from my own school days is that the jocks were strong young men. I mean mentally strong. They played rugby. You have to be psychologically strong for that. You have to be clever to play rugby. That's not a stupid man's game, rugby. It's not soccer. Rugby's a clever guy's game, and you have to swallow your ego in rugby. When you're a good rugby player, you have to put the team above you. So it's not a stupid man's game, rugby. And they're not stupid people who are successful at it. Far from it. I remember that in teaching. The top rugger boys in the schools, when I'd teach in rugby boys' schools, all the top rugby boys would be the ones who'd go on to do medicine or law or that kind of thing. And they'd be polite and they'd be clever and they'd be kind to the other boys. They weren't bullies. I've said this in a previous video of mine, Revenge of the Nerds, but it's true. It's true. We are witnessing the fracture between... Well, it was a fracture that was coming. It was like the San Andreas Fault. It was this earthquake that had been precipitating for a very, very long time, probably from the 1960s when cultural Marxism began to infest the West, in which the strong men and the weak men are fracturing now, visibly. It's been happening for a long time, but it's visible now. The strong men don't wear masks. The strong men... It doesn't matter if you're a tiny little guy, 7 stone, weakling. If you're not wearing a mask, you're a strong man. Because it's psychological. It's not about physique. And then, as Angela Merrell said, Miss Jane is her YouTube handle. Her real name is Angela Merrell. We did a video on Sunday night, Angela and I did. And I've never done a video before. I've never actually done my own interview of somebody online. She's there in England. I'm here in northeast Dublin out by the sea. And it was really good. And I actually managed to download it from Skype because Skype, Skype is like the Krypton factor. Oh, Skype would drive you around the bend. But I got the video and I'm going to edit it. Anything that, we agreed that we might edit out stuff that might incriminate somebody else or that might... So I'll edit it and I'll put it up on YouTube. But it's actually a really good talk Angela had. Angela has put up 2 videos that actually really inspired me. I mentioned it last week. Thomas had shared it on Twitter. Thomas is the focal point for so many of us, and when Thomas puts stuff up, I always love Thomas's videos, and whenever Thomas recommends a film, well, that's it, I have to go and watch it. But mind you, he's recommended some damn good films. The Mist, that was a really good film, and I got great insight into Mrs. Carmody in The Mist. She was totally fearless, and they killed her in the end. Sorry, it's plot spoiler, better put it in the description. So I'll let you go, but that's what happened today, or yesterday. We've now passed the threshold into Tuesday. And the double masks are coming in and people are getting more desperate and, RTE are ramping up the fear porn. Thomas in his Sunday night video, excellent video, Thomas. So good, Thomas. He talks about the black mass of RTE and the Late Late Show. Yeah, he's right. He talks in a laudatory way about Gay Byrne, who was the host and producer of The Late Late. When Gay retired, he retired I think in 1999 or 2000, Pat Kenny took over. Pat Kenny took over for about 9 or 10 years. Now, Pat Kenny is a competent host. He hosted Eurovision with Michelle Rocca in 1988. And he comes over like Alan Partridge on it. It was a very well-staged Eurovision in Dublin in 88. It was actually, the production standard of the 88 Eurovision in Dublin was excellent. Now, the Hot House Flowers had a dreadful interval act. But just if you look at it from a technical point of view, it was a masterpiece of a show. So Pat Kenny has talent as a broadcaster. Ryan Tubridy, as Thomas said, in England he'd be reading the weather on Tyne Tees News. Look north. Thomas mentioned a video. I'm just taking an aside here. A video on ITV in the early 1990s that was talking about Boys Town. It was not made by Granada. It was made by Yorkshire Television, and it was First Tuesday. Just to clarify that, it was First Tuesday, made by Yorkshire Television. Again, we see how ITV has changed because, and even I heard that comment made about it, it was made in Leeds. It was not made in London because they wouldn't have been tolerated in London.